Old man Elias, a retired carpenter who'd spent his life shaping wood in solitude, lived alone at the edge of a quiet forest village. Every morning began the same: black coffee, creaking joints, and the familiar hush of trees. But today, that hush was broken. From beyond the trees came a sound not of wolves or owls, but desperate, soul-wrenching howl that made Elias set down his cup mid-sip. It wasn't the kind of cry animals made in fear. It was grief, pleading. Stepping onto his porch, cane in one hand, he squinted to the fog to find a thin, trembling mother dog at his gate. Mud matted her fur, and her ribs jutted beneath the skin. She didn't growl or bark for food. She whined, paced, and looked at him like she was begging. Her eyes locked with his. Something unspoken passed between them. Then she turned and disappeared into the woods, stopping only to glance back. Elias, heart-thudding, muttered, "God help me," grabbed his coat and followed. The path through the woods was no longer familiar. Overgrown roots snagged Elias's boots, and damp leaves clung to his legs as he trudged behind a frantic mother dog. She moved with urgency, her body low, ears flicking at every sound. Every few steps, she looked back to make sure he was still there, her eyes wild with desperation. Elias hadn't been this deep in the forest since his wife passed. The terrain was harsher now, less forgiving, but something in the dog's panic drove him forward. Then he began to see it. Broken twigs snapped at angles, claw marks in the dirt, and tiny paw prints pressed into mud. His breath caught when he noticed flecks of red on a fern leaf. Blood. He knelt to touch it. Still tacky. Further ahead, he spotted a hanging piece of rope, thick, frayed, tied around a low branch in a cruel, unnatural loop. Elias ran a hand over the knot, his stomach churning. This wasn't accidental. The mother dog began whining again, pawing at the earth ahead as if trying to dig her way to something. Elias's chest tightened as he forced his legs to keep moving. Something terrible was waiting up ahead. The trees parted into a small clearing bathed in sunlight, but the light did nothing to warm what Elias saw next. His breath hitched, and his legs nearly buckled beneath him. There at the base of a hollow log lay a tiny puppy, limbs splayed unnaturally, its fragile paws driven through with rusted nails. Blood had dried in dark rivulets across its fur, and flies buzzed lazily in the still air. For a long moment, Elias couldn't move. The world narrowed to a sickening silence, broken only by the anguished cry of the mother dog as she bolted forward, licking the pup's face, pawing gently at its side, whining as if to wake it. Elias finally dropped to his knees beside them, voice cracking. "Dear God, who could do this?" His hands shook as he reached out. Just as he was about to close the pup's eyes, he saw it, a shallow, trembling breath. It was faint, but it was life. The puppy was still alive. Elias's hands trembled as he dug through the deep pocket of his coat, fingers brushing past a pocket knife and matches before landing on the cold metal of his old multi-tool. His breath caught in his throat as he approached the mutilated puppy, careful not to spook the mother dog, who now stood guard, panting heavily and refusing to leave her pup's side. "Easy now," Elias murmured, kneeling beside them. His fingers, stiff with age, found the first nail lodged in the tiny paw. The sound of it sliding free, metal groaning against bone, made his stomach turn. The puppy whimpered faintly, a heartbreaking sound, but didn't resist. It was too weak to protest. Elias worked methodically, whispering, "Almost there, little one. Hang on." Each rusty nail he removed brought another tremor to his soul. Once the last one came free, he gently scooped the limp puppy into his flannel shirt, wrapping it tightly like a fragile newborn. Blood seeped into the fabric, staining it dark. The mother dog pressed her nose into the bundle, sniffing, then looked up and licked Elias's weathered hand. He blinked back tears. "We need to move," he said hoarsely, rising slowly, his joints protesting with every motion. Time was against them. Elias burst through the doors of the village's small veterinary clinic, like a storm, flannel shirt soaked in blood, cradling the near-lifeless body of the puppy. The mother dog followed close behind, barking frantically, tail low, eyes wild with fear. The receptionist gasped, nearly knocking over her chair. "Please," Elias rasped, "help her." Without hesitation, Dr. Lila rushed from the back room. Her face paled at the sight, but she didn't ask questions. She snatched the bundled pup from Elias's arms and vanished into surgery, shouting for assistance. Elias stood frozen in the waiting area, his hands stained red, his breath shallow. The door slowly creaked open behind him, and villagers began to gather. Word traveled fast in the village. Murmurs swept through the crowd. A few recalled hearing dogs cry in the woods days before. One man mentioned seeing teens hanging around with rope and hammers. Others averted their eyes in guilt, pretending they hadn't noticed. Among them, a teenage boy stared at Elias's bloodied hands. Face pale, jaw tight. Without a word, he turned and slipped away, vanishing down the street, leaving behind a silence heavier than any accusation. As evening shadows crept across the clinic walls, Elias sat motionless beside the small recovery bed, his eyes never leaving the puppy's tiny, bandaged body. The little one lay curled against his mother, who wrapped herself around like a shield, eyes blinking slowly, yet alert, a guardian refusing to rest. Elias gently rested a hand on her back. She didn't flinch. She knew he was safe. Dr. Lila returned with a clipboard in hand and a grim expression. "There were bite marks, bruises," she said softly, sitting across from him. "Not just from today. This pup's been abused, tied down, beaten, then nailed, like it was some kind of sick game." Elias clenched his fists, jaw tightening with silent fury. "We need to tell the police," she added. And they did. Elias gave every detail. Within days, authorities identified 3 teenage boys, the same one seen wander near the woods with a hammer, laughing too loud, too often. One of them had even recorded the act on his phone. The footage, sickening and damning, left no room for denial. They were taken in, faces pale and defiant. But the village had seen enough. The truth could no longer be hidden. Weeks passed like gentle tides, slowly washing away the pain. The puppy, now lovingly named Hope by Dr. Lila, began to show signs of life that once seemed impossible. Her little legs wobbled with each step, one permanently crooked from the trauma, but she moved, and her tail wagged every time Elias entered the room. Her eyes, once dull with fear, now shimmered with cautious trust. The mother dog never left her side, sleeping curled around Hope as if protecting a flame in the wind. Elias, with his old carpenter's hands, built them a shelter in his backyard. Not just a doghouse, but a small wooden haven carved with delicate vines, stars, and symbols of peace. Word of what had happened spread, and the villagers, once indifferent, began showing up. Some brought food. Others came with blankets or medical supplies. A few came with apologies, shame in their eyes. The once-hated stray was now seen as a hero, a mother whose love saved a life. Elias, a man who once found comfort only in quiet, now smiled at the sound of little paws scrambling across the porch, the playful barks, the village children who came to visit Hope. His yard, once silent, now pulsed with laughter, healing, and second chances. One quiet morning, as the mist still hung low over the treetops, Elias walked slowly toward the forest's edge, his cane tapping softly against the earth. At his side patted the mother dog, now stronger, her fur glossier, her eyes calmer. Behind her trotted Hope, still a bit wobbly but full of determination, tail wagging at every step. The path they once took in panic was now a pilgrimage, one of healing. In his other hand, Elias carried a hand-carved wooden cross, not a symbol of death, but of survival. When they reached the clearing, the place where horror once clung to the trees, he knelt and drove the cross gently into the soil beside the hollow log. On its face he'd etched a single word: survivors. "Let this be the last time cruelty hides here," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. The mother dog let out a low, gentle bark, her gaze fixed on the wooden symbol. Hope stepped forward and licked Elias's weathered hand. He looked down at her and smiled through misty eyes. In that moment, Elias felt something he hadn't in years, not just purpose, but peace. He hadn't just saved lives. He had borne witness to a love fierce enough to overcome evil. A mother's unyielding devotion had turned pain into hope and silence into song.